should say going live. There it does. This meeting is now being live streamed. I say that at the beginning of all these meetings, and it says got it. So, Sandra, I'll just be 1 second while I go to my page over here like this.
Take your time.
Okie dokie. There we are. We are live across the globe. Or is it a globe? Or is it flat? Who cares? Who cares? I just really don't care. So there we are. The comments will appear here soon. Sandra or Sandra, if you're posh, it's nice to see you. How are you getting on?
It's nice to be seen. I'm upright and moving around. I'm good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm over here. For people who don't know me, I'm over here near Liverpool. We're about 5 miles away from Liverpool, but there's a river that separates us, called the River Mersey. So I'm fine. In myself, I feel reasonably emotionally calm, which I normally do anyway. I'm not, I'm quite a calm person really, and clear-minded, but I don't feel like that all the time. And I've actually found the last week quite challenging, really, probably as a result of all these energies coming in, whatever that means. I'm hoping that you can explain all this to me.
Well, I'll certainly do my best. I live here in DC and it's a very high voltage area, but it's all I've known all my life. So you learn to adapt to the energies. It's like living near landmines. You get used to either knowing where they are and stepping over them, or that
Yeah.
occurs. So I think we all are adapting and we're learning how to adapt. Some people, it doesn't come very natural. Um, but we've got a lot of energy changes going on. I mean, energy is energy. Everything is energy. And sometimes we get a little too caught up on specific things. I mean, because it's the whole picture. It's the whole picture. I think you and I were just saying, is the world round or is it flat? Who cares? You're here. What I mean, like, what's it going to do for you?
Yeah. It's
Like,
it's all that
okay.
it's all that chicken and egg stuff and all that, isn't it? I mean, I used to be highly analytical because that was what my first job was all about, as a sort of medical and biomedical scientist. So I'm very analytical, really. And I didn't realize at the time that I was only using half of my brain, the left side, my left hemisphere. I didn't know any of this until I became very, very ill. And I think sometimes illness and disease is purposeful if you understand what it's about, and I do now. And where it took me was, it took me down the route of alcoholism, and having to lose everything, including nearly losing my life, right, to understand that I was only really a half-hearted person. And so I'm glad that it took me to the rock bottom and almost like to the place of leaving to understand that there's different ways of living. But the most important thing was to realize how pretentious I was, right, and how to live a heart-centered life rather than a head-centered life. What do you think about that then?
Well, I can really feel that, Joe. And everybody's rock bottom is different. Some people could look at that story and go, "Well, how the hell did you get down that far without picking yourself up?" Everybody's rock bottom is different. Everybody's visceral responses to energetic experiences are different. And we're here as humans to literally have the experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, and not judging someone else from what they're going through. Now, I have to commend you. If you're using half a brain, well, you're a half a leg ahead of me. Because sometimes
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on up there. And there's times when I can have days where stuff is coming out of my mouth wrong, and I'm walking sideways, and if I had to stop and go to an IQ meter and check it, I would have to turn it back around and go back to bed.
oh no, I understand that perfectly. I mean, where I'm up to now is I used to be a knowledgeable idiot. One of those know all knows foot, that one, right? And
Yes.
somebody said to me once, he said, "This is the bloke who helped me because most of my recovery's taken place in Alcoholics Anonymous. I went through the
Mm,
12-step recovery program, and it's basically saved my life. And I
mm,
can explain a bit more about that later on. But to me, it was to lead me back to my true self and to really start to grow again from there, like a second chance of life. I'm not a religious person, but I understand that when people are in certain conditions and positions, if they surrender almost everything that they think that they know and sink into their heart, it's almost like a new intelligence starts to emerge to guide people, and that's what I try and do now. Is I don't give people answers to what they should do or anything other than the key or the solution is in your heart of hearts, and I can sort of show you how to get into that and help you to learn to listen to what your innate intelligence is trying to guide you with. So that's what I do for a living, really. It's like it's an energetic practice, really.
Yeah, and I'm listening to you, and we kind of turned the camera on without having one thing that we even knew we were going to discuss, and it came up with you becoming awakened, and then going into alcoholism and rebounding, and going through the 12 steps, and how that's helped you now open up your heart. And I think that's an important message right now, because we have so much happening where many souls feel like their contracts are up and they got to go. But it could be interpreted as they're embodying their soul, and their soul just really wants to come out and start to shine now. So it's almost like a splitting of self. So we have people hitting some sort of rock bottom, but maybe not all the way. And before they're allowing themselves to get there, they're talking about, maybe I need to leave this planet. Maybe I'll be better off, not being with my family or feeling the way that I'm feeling. And it's also people that are the sanest of the sane, that are all of a sudden something's coming over them and they're feeling like, I don't know what this is, but I can't be left alone because I'm not sure what I'm going to do to myself. I mean, it's very bizarre roller coaster riding energy that people like you and I have experienced some of, but and I can't say that the experiences make us that much of a better type of counselor, coach, whatever, but we can identify a little bit more and pinpoint a little bit more, and our guide team can come in and assist people a little bit more, because we're willing to go into that visceral gutter of, I got nothing. I'm like 1 centimeter away or less of exiting, because I don't know why I'm here. But we've bounced back, and we're here showing people that there is another avenue, another pathway, another purpose for your life, because there's multiple purposes. And we're in some of that energy right now, big time.
Very much. And what you said before is sometimes I wake up and I'll get out of bed and I can hardly walk straight because I feel like I'm being pushed over by these great big waves, invisible waves. And it's
Yeah.
like, who am I? What am I here for? In fact, where am I? And I have those. I used to have that on drink, the next morning after drink, like, who's this? Right? Where have I been? I can't remember anything. Well, I'm sort of getting that now, but I'm sort of clean and sober now. And it's coming up to nearly 33 years since I've been practicing sort of cleaning my own side of the street, you see, because what I know now at depth is that what I give out, I get back. And I didn't understand any of this really. And it's a perfect reflection of how my mind processes information, both consciously, but mostly unconsciously. And I didn't realize that what was actually out there was a reflection of what's going on in here. Now, I'm not a religious person. I used to be, but I've sort of put that aside now for a different way of looking at things. And so if I get like a grip in the gut for any reason and I don't know what it is, rather than reacting on it now, I've sort of trained myself most of the time, because sometimes I make mistakes. Most of the time, I can take a step back now, breathe in a certain way, get back on a level playing field, and just sort of say to this innate part of me, what was that about? And sometimes I get a clear answer is, you should have said yes there when you said no. and you said no because you were afraid of that person's reaction. So just go back to them and say, actually, I'm sorry, I've changed my mind and I'm sorry to mess you about, but I've decided to say the opposite of what I've just said. And what seems to
Mhm.
happen with me, I don't know whether it happens with you, is it's almost like a little opening happens and I get like an influx of new energy that comes in. And I think that what that's about to me is just living in the truth, the truth. Because I was bloody brilliant at ducking and diving, watching the way your face moved. If you made a certain, I changed myself to suit what I thought you were doing. Don't have to do that
Mhm.
anymore. It's just everything's quite simple, really. I'm just as honest as I possibly can be, and this is who I am.
Yeah, but you know what you're just talking about there about reading somebody else's body movements, their face, their expressions, which side of their mouth do they just talk out of? That is actually a beautiful way to learn how to communicate. And sometimes we have multiple ways that we learn how to communicate. We're taught, the standardized way, but in our spiritual way, we'll have maybe one that's more primary. I can relate to that because I work on feelings. And sometimes the feelings are then backed up by the movement of a face or a change in a vocal. And I'm still quite good at that. But like you, I'm much more stable that I can now look at it without my resting bitch face giving me away.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I get it. I can just look completely blank. But you know what? We get off a rocky boat and we've got to steady our sea legs, right? And that's what we're doing. And that's called life. We're going to hit bumps and waves, and it's how do we uh, excel and succeed and not harm ourselves any further and dip any deeper into something and then learn the lesson with creating the least amount of pain. But sometimes it's in the pain that we learn so much about ourselves. And I think it goes back to that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, which I'm not a fan of that
no,
expression, honestly. Because I used to say, well, why? Like, why would I just go like, why? Let's just learn what it is and how to maneuver through it with as much grace and ease as possible, even while we're doing the, bouncing and we're miffed and we're befuddled and we don't have an answer and we have to search for it. But we also want that instant gratification so that we have those answers. And you get those by doing your deep work.
I agree. I got quite clearly today when your needs and your wants are the same. That's true peace of mind. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So my thing is that because what I'm working towards, and from AA as well, is nothing's promised you, no success, no big financial gains, no climbing to the top of the ladder. They don't promise any of that. All they promise is that if you follow this pathway, right, then you'll end up with more and more peace of mind. And I've got
Mm.
that now. I'm most of the time I'm very, very comfortable with how I'm behaving, right, and everything else that's going on. Really, one of my biggest problems is I can sometimes see clearly where other people are, and I butt in sometimes and try and interfere. It's good intentionally, but again, if they don't ask for it, I shouldn't be doing it. So that's some deeply ingrained thing in me. But
Hmm.
I mean, I'm open with it now. If I get a kickback and they sort of lash out at me to say fuck off and leave me alone, I say no, I'm sorry, I was interfered in there. I've got no problem doing that anymore, generally speaking. So,
Hmm.
so you live and learn, don't you? That's what this is about, living and learning, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it is. I just wish I knew now,
Yeah,
a couple decades ago,
yeah,
because damn, I could have excelled a lot better than and avoided some of those hard knocks. But the hard knocks are what gets me to where I am, and the fluffy clouds are what gets me, to where I am. But we're all on different planes of existence in the same realm, learning different lessons. And it's like stairs. We're going up and down stairs. Going back down doesn't necessarily mean that you failed in something, you know but we got to reach in here, because spirit just keeps pounding into my head right now. um you know it's Now is the time for expansion and awareness. There's no more time to be sitting around going, yeah, I'll get to that, I'll improve on that later, or I'll do that later. The time's now. It's time to open up and empty out some of those filtration systems that are all clogged up. They're blocking you from seeing new material.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I had a talk last night with somebody, and we talked about that the only time you've got to change is right now, right? So what are you going to do about it? And people, I used to make this excuse, oh, in divine timing, I'll just wait and all that sort of thing. And I think that we're being, like Todd would say, let go or be dragged, because it's happening quicker and quicker and quicker. So I my sort of spiritual awakening, if you like, the big one, right? Because I didn't understand really anything about that. I had inklings all through my life. But it was in 1987 at the time of what's called the harmonic convergence, right? And it was almost like my head opened up and all sorts of information started to fly in, right? And I just couldn't get my head around it at all. And I was trying to run and bang myself against the wall to knock all this stuff out, because it was so horrendous. I even tried to throw myself off a railway bridge and things like this. But looking back, I was taken to, for some reason, I found myself once again in the psychiatric department, right? Diagnosed with all sorts of things like schizophrenia, or multiple personality, or bipolar disease, or borderline personality. They couldn't quite pin it down. And I realized today that it was none of those things at all. It was something called a spiritual awakening, And once I started to get into this, and it was actually, I'd been to AA for 9 years beforehand, and I was in this hospital in the ward above, and there was an AA meeting going on downstairs, right? And I'd been in and out of AA for 9 years. And what they did was they came up from the AA meeting to see me, and they encouraged me to come down and sit with them and have a cup of tea. And it was in that meeting, it was almost like everything fell into place. And that was like the start of my recovery on a completely different footing. I didn't know I was going to talk about all that, but and from that day on, really, I've tried to follow the teachings of AA, which are basically about be yourself, right? First of all, find yourself, because I thought I was myself, right? Find yourself, be yourself, and create something beautiful with yourself. And that's what I try and do every day, generally.
And alcohol is just one form of advice, of a vice that just clouds your judgment, and it's an avoidance, so to speak. It's an addiction like anything else, but most people candy coat certain addictions they have, like maybe to some food that they probably shouldn't eat, or this or that. And we're coming to the point now, I'm telling you, where it's like, you know what, that habit isn't serving me, and I've got to stop. And you were talking about sleeping and waking up and feeling one way or the other. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I go to the mirror and I go, where the hell did you go last night that you ate all that food because you gained 10 pounds? What have you been doing while you were sleeping? You can't go anywhere and start eating. What are you eating when you go wherever you go? I'm like, okay, this has to stop. So we're all going through so much stuff that's showing us in our face the stuff that we need to change. And that means organizing our life, organizing the physical, the mental, the spiritual, the etheric, the emotional, which is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it keeps triggering people. I'm like, okay, I'll get over that. Okay. Instead of saying, you know what, something just came up and it keeps coming up. And I need to sit with that. Yeah. I need to stop, drop, sit, connect with that breath, and just say, okay, I acknowledge something's going on. I don't know what it is, but I'd like for more information to come in. And then it can happen, within days, within weeks, you'll have an aha moment and you'll be, oh.
So when you say you wait for more information to come in, where's it coming in from?
So for me personally, it's my higher self. I don't channel. I've never invited to channeling in at any point. I communed with my higher self in full embodiment back in 2017. And it was sort of a dream state ritual that we went through. And it was so profound that I literally, from then on out, was different. Even though I came into this world seeing, feeling, seeing, and sensing things very different than my siblings or my parents did. I could understand what people were saying without their mouth moving. I could understand energies. I could understand. I knew right away if someone was telling partial truth or truth just by movements of vocals or and how who does that? I didn't have any training in that. I was always intuitive. I always felt like I had it together. I always accepted whatever mistakes I made because I made them, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't look to my parents or anyone else after I got older to confirm whether they agreed or disagreed with my choices. But once I communed with my higher self, um, for the last 7 years, it's been more ingrained and more ingrained and more ingrained. And I do nothing, I say nothing, I walk nowhere without having this inner what's the word I want to use? Consultation with myself. Because anything that's going to come out of my pie hole, whether it's a movement of my body that approves or different approves, whether it seems aggressive or assertive or whatever it is, I think before I do, because I can affect someone else. Now, I came in with my own karma, my own lessons of life, right? But because I failed to maybe complete a lesson doesn't mean I have to spew that energy all over innocent people. So now I have to go back and somehow either apologize, whether it's energetically and forgive, or whether it's physically go and say, I wasn't very nice and I said some stuff and I may have come across a certain way. So for the last 7 years, I live it, breathe it, and I wait for that information to come in. And I don't tell anybody anything without having a pause.
Yeah. Yeah. Similar. And I went through the recovery program of AA, as I've mentioned, and I made the list of all persons that harmed, and I became willing to make amends to them all. And most of them were direct amends, because the whole process was really about humiliation before humility. And I didn't understand what it was meant, because I had a very tough sponsor, and he used to guide me, and he'd say, go and apologize to that person now. And I'd be very frightened, but I knew that if I wanted to be free of this alcohol addiction, which is based on emotional insecurity and immaturity, right, then I had to go through my fears and go and face these people. So it's a very sensible approach, because he was 20 years sober when he was taking me through the program. And we sat down together like a consultation, and we put things in order. And he said, I suggest, right, that this is the order that you need to do it on. Because I wanted to do the easy ones first, and he gave me the most difficult ones first, and you go through it in a very sensible way. And I remember knocking on people's doors and the look of shock or horror or surprise. And I'd just say, look, I've realized, if you like, the error of my ways, and I caused you a lot of problems. I'm so sorry. And if there's absolutely anything I can do to smooth this out, then I'll be glad to. And most people said to me, Joe, you're a lovely, lovely fella, but when you got a few drinks down, you was such a pain in the arse, right? We knew you weren't well, and we're very glad that you're getting better. Good luck to you. And some people said, I never want to see your fucking face again. Do not ever come back here again, because I never want to see it. And that really hurt me. And I went back to my sponsor, and he said, did you apologize? I said, yeah. He said, did you argue with them? I said, not in the slightest. And he said, your job is done. And every time I did this, it was almost like I got an influx of freedom and energy. And I started to get more and more courage. And I sort of got into the momentum of it then. I thought, who could I apologize to next? I was even making people up to go and say sorry to. So that's the process that I had to go through, really, because Sandra, in my drinking, right, I was ferocious, absolutely and utterly ferocious, not just with my mouth, but physically as well. And so I had to go and apologize to people for those things. And I look back now, and I've got a much clearer picture now of the process that I've gone through. It's a purpose. There was a purpose to my life. Just let me ask you while it's coming into my mind. Do you believe then that before we are actually incarnated or born, that we come in with some sort of a purpose or a mission?
I've asked myself that a lot of questions, about that particular topic. I believe we do. I had a lot of dream states as a child. And I also had a lot of opportunities to rearrange my dreams so that the outcomes were different. So I was working on different levels besides my physical young self. Because I was very different than my siblings, even though we may look alike, but my inner constitution was different. I knew I had to come from somewhere else. And a matter of fact, my older sister used to say, when I was 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 15, you're an alien. You didn't come from this planet. You don't belong here. And I mean, to the point where I kind of believed it. I had to ask my mom where I came from. So I do believe that we come with our consciousness full of a lot of stuff from other lifetimes. And it got confirmed to me around, I want to say maybe 2002, 2, when I decided I wanted to go get a past life regression. Who the hell ever heard of that back then? Nobody. And I went and I sat there in a chair and I was like, okay, I'm a type A, I'm a busy bee, okay, you're going to hypnotize me. Well, let's go. And I wasn't challenging him. I was actually there to be all in. I was like, okay, well, I have a hard time calming myself down. Let's see how this works. And sure enough, I wound up in another lifetime and I didn't know where I was. So every time that therapist said, Sandy, where are you? I go, I don't know. I don't know. Because I was too embarrassed to say where I was until he started to say where I was. And then I went, oh my God, he's in my brain. How does he know this? And then I felt free to say it. And I said, I'm in a room. There's brick wall. There's an old table. I'm a woman. I don't know where this outfit came from, but I'm angry. And I'm furious because I spoke up about something and other people spoke up, but they were men and I was a woman and now I was going to be put to death. And so I literally walked out the door in this regression and I saw a noose and I went straight for it. And then as the noose approached as close to my vision as I could, everything went black. So I knew in that moment that somewhere in some lifetime I was put to death for speaking. And that, my friends, had everything to do with vocal cord issues and my inability to speak without turning 20 shades of red and wanting to hide and feeling like I had nothing of value to say because so many of my things were on another level anyway, right? And then all the mundane things that were going on in life, I didn't really have a lot to contribute to. I just wanted to get on and get school done and keep moving. And this wasn't part of it. So yes, I do believe that we come in with agendas and purposes. And I had to get over that. And through a few more sessions, that happened to me through different decades of centuries in different lifetimes as men and women. And then I realized, that's why I have a vocal cord dysfunction. This is why I have kind of neck issues as a kid with no injuries.
Yeah.
And then I realized, okay, I need to love this area. I need to love this area long before I knew about chakras, long before I even got into any of this kind of stuff in later decades of my life. So yeah, I do. The answer to that question, as I chased my tail and told you all that, yes.
No, makes perfect sense to me. I feel exactly the same way, that there's much more going on in the invisible realms than we could possibly realize. The ancient Hebrews apparently used to call this 3D world, let's call it that for now, Earth, they used to call it the 1% world, that there's actually 99% of other stuff going on. All right. And people who are susceptible or sensitive to it, they can pick this stuff up, And when I went through this program of recovery, I started to see and feel much more clearly as all the gunge was being sort of washed away. I got this clear, the night I did my inventory, what they do is you write a whole list of people. And then we went into this bloke's backyard and set light to it. And it went off then. He said, now you can let all that go, I'm getting a thing up my spine as I'm saying it, Let it go, let it go. It's coming up quite big now. Let it go. So that went away and he said, now go home, he said, and just sit down in the quiet and just feel what we've just gone through. And as I was doing this, I felt this peace that passeth all understanding almost descended upon me. And this voice clearly said to me, Joseph, we love you. And I thought, I said, "Oh my God!" Right? I said, "That's
You had to get sober to hear that
yeah,
voice.
absolutely." So it said it really clearly, and I said, "That's very, very nice." I said, "Thanks very much." I said, "Bugger off." I said, "And come back in the morning when it's light, you know." And at the time, and I fell into this deep sleep. And when I got up the next morning, everything had changed. I looked at the news and I thought, "What's all that about?" You know. So my world changed, my perspective, perspective and perception changed, and that was another sort of shift that I'd gone through, really. So all these sort of things, and where I'm up to now is I do believe that each one of us, every person on this planet, right, it does come in with a purpose, a mission, almost like they represent a key to the whole picture, really. And that's why I try and help people. I talk about my experience and my strength and my hope, where I've made mistakes and where I've improved. And I just sort of let it all come out. And it seems to be helpful to people, really. Can I just ask you about the
Yeah.
hypnosis and the past life regression? Is that QHHT? Is that what they call it?
So I have education in that too, and beyond quantum healing, and then I also have the traditional. So I've done a whole mix of different things because I wanted my toolbox to have as many ampules as I could to empower someone else to step into themselves. But I want to make a point here real quick about your forgiveness thing, because I think it's really important to drive this home right now, because obviously it's coming up. And that is that forgiveness isn't about the response that someone gives you. And if you absolutely can't face somebody, you can energetically walk through the veils and go through forgiveness. Um, I remember long before I was an adult, I think I had a dream, and it went back to like the cowboys and the Indians and all the death that was happening and what was really, really occurred. And I saw myself on both sides as beings on both sides. And I remember being horrified at the treatment that occurred. And I had to energetically go in and ask for forgiveness for myself and whatever part I played in harming anyone, whether it was my agenda to come in, whatever it was, whatever side I was on, whatever soldier, Indian, whatever, a housewife, whatever it was back then, a saloon owner. I had to ask for forgiveness for whatever my participation was during that time. And I asked for forgiveness for all those who participated in that particular arena. And I have to tell you, the lightening of the load it's beyond what many people have really experienced of what real true forgiveness is. So it doesn't have to be face to face to someone, and you don't have to worry about what their response is if it is. You know what I mean? Because they're confirming it doesn't give you absolution. It's the fact that you're taking the effort to either go face to face or write a letter or give somebody a call and or go into a hypnosis state and maybe go through some lifetimes, because the person maybe you had a problem with then is currently in your circle now. And if you can work on healing it here, then it may heal here in your physical realm. And that's the beauty of some of this kind of work.
I agree, and that's what I was talking about the same thing last night, is that we can like clear away most of our personal karma, and then what seems to happen then is we have to get shut of the ancestral karma, and whether we can do that in the moments or we have to travel back to the past in order to clear the future, all that sort of. I don't get too heavily involved with the analysis of it, but I know what needs to be done. And what I say in the morning when I wake up, I put my hands on my heart and I go almost like, "Hello, anybody in there? Are you awake? Are you awake yet?" Because I have a very sort of familial sort of connection, because this higher self or deeper self, or it's me anyway. It's just me. So
Totally.
it's a more intelligent, innate, and sort of version than me. And I say, "Look, I'm really. What have you got on the cards today?" And I just go out and play some. I say, "But haven't we got any work to do? We'll let you know if we need you." That's the sort of attitude I have. And it's almost like I'll be going along and suddenly I get a feeling. It's almost like, pay attention now, turn left at the bottom of the road. And I thought, okay,
Yeah.
me head wants to come in and say why, But I know now to say, I'll just turn up and see what happens next, and it's miraculous, really. Absolutely and utterly miraculous.
Totally, because you could get up in the morning and go, I really do have A, B, and C to do, but my spirit is saying, get in the car and drive to the coffee shop. And you're like, well, I really shouldn't be driving to the coffee shop. I have this whole list of things I'm supposed to be doing. I really shouldn't be doing this. And you go and you do it. And then all of a sudden you've met somebody, or a word exchange, or even an energetic no word exchange, because that is where you were supposed to be. And then after that occurs, you can go home and get what you need done, and you're actually doing it with a little more skip in your step.
Couldn't agree more. Time and
You just
energy
got to put
management.
the guilt away, right?
Yeah.
Spirit's telling you. And listen, I'm just going to say this to all the viewers: the more you get to play in this arena, and you learn to pivot, and you learn to get into adaptation, you are going to find your life has more play. It has more peace. It has more calm. Because that is really what we're supposed to be living here. Not, okay, I got to do this on my list, and I got to do that on my list, and then I'm responsible for people in my home. And well, I can't go self-nurture right now because that's putting myself first. I have other people that have responsibilities, obligations. And the next thing you know, you're old and gray, and you're like, what the frick have I done to my life? I should have been more kind to myself.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda, too late,
Yeah.
So I have the same mentality now. It's like I go with what I feel. I'm writing a book at the moment. It's called The F Off Approach to
Love
Health and
it.
Happiness. And it
Love it.
stands for focus on feelings
Mm-hmm.
first.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like, and I say this a lot, metaphorically, it's like taking the head off, throwing it away, and just working from what emerges and flows from here. I'm not like that all the time, but I'm improving all the time. I don't know everything. I've learned a lot about myself, right? And it's all being purposeful, and I do feel now that I'm leading a much more purposeful life, and it was all meant for a reason. And that's what I really feel. And sometimes, as I say, I don't feel like that. When I met you in Houston, right, I wasn't well that week. I had a terrible week. Before I came over, it was almost like somebody had split me and my head in two with a hatchet, right? And for 3 days, I could hardly lift my head. And I'm saying then to me soul or my spirit or my higher power or whatever, I'm saying, what's all that about? And I just do what needs to be done. Take it easy. Look after yourself. So it did work out to be successful, but to be honest with you, right, I didn't enjoy much of it because I felt so crap.
Well,
But
I think
sorry, I
a
beg your
lot of
pardon.
stuff. No, a lot of people stuff was coming up before that trip, and almost everyone I talked to was like this close to canceling their own trip for one reason or another. But I want to go back to something you said about taking your head off and throwing it away. There's times I take my head off and I'm taking toothpaste and my toothbrush and trying to brighten up my spark plugs. Occasionally, I'm using bleach.
Yeah,
Anything else I can get in there, clean all that out.
yeah. Oh, it's
Yeah.
amazing, isn't it? And I just didn't know. I don't knock myself at all now because I didn't know. As far as I remember, I've never wanted to cause any harm to anybody. In fact, to be a helpful lad. But it didn't work in truth, and with alcohol, and sometimes not with alcohol as well. So what they showed me was the alcohol's in the bottle, but the ism's in me. Right. And once I started to see that, it was very interesting because I thought if I put the drink down, that my life would just change around and everything. No, because things emerge slowly but surely from all the repressed stuff of ages, eons of time going back millions of years. Stuff comes up and is presented with you in the present to be dealt with there and then, right? And I know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that, I don't think anybody's going to get away with anything that they've got to face, really. But there is a solution, and the solution is in your heart. And that's what I sort of heart centricity and breathing in a specific way and stuff like that. You work in a health center, Sandra, yeah?
I do. I do. I work for a medical practice that, embraces the wellness department. And so I do a little bit of the medical stuff, and then I do a lot of the energetic healing work. And we'll eventually be expanding in the next year and adding in a lot more things. But for now, I'm kind of the core crew, and opening up the door and also opening up the minds of some of the medical practitioners to the power of what healing can be. And then of course I live and breathe it too. So, and then I want to go back to something you just said, because everywhere you go, there you are. Everywhere you go, there you are. And guess what? That is what I'm talking about. Is now is the time to expand your awareness. Because if you're going to do what you do today and expect tomorrow to be any freaking different, and then next week and next month, the next thing you know, you're going to look back and a year, 2 years, a decade went by, and you haven't sat and made some changes within self, then everywhere you go, there you are. And if that's the case, how do you want to be when you get to where you're going? And that takes a little bit of that inner work. And when you start working with the heart center, because a lot of people steer away from that because it's vulnerable, brings up emotions. Nobody wants to cry in front of each other. And then you just get to the point where you're like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Shedding tears is awesome, because it's the body's way of releasing a valve of pressure that it had, saying, oh God, thank you for releasing that pathway. I needed to open that up. And so it cools the body down. It warms the body up. The temperatures change. Everything changes within chemistry of the neurotransmitters. You know this. You're a neuroscientist. Plus, by the way, I don't think I've ever met a scientist that's religious, by the way, including my own father.
Yeah. It depends what you mean, I suppose, by religious. I mean, I think religiousness, right, and spirituality are the same. I think they're the same thing, really. I think
Yeah.
religion to me is a different thing, where it's almost like it was fed to me, because at the age of 11 I was sent away to train to be a Roman Catholic priest at 11
Oh,
years of
wow.
age. Yeah.
Is that
And
when your drinking started?
yeah, probably, yeah. And it was like it was a 12-year course, right? And I was 11 years of age, and we used to have to speak Latin at 6 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. It was so frightening. But having said that, there was also a part of it that I love. I've been back to this place. It was 200 miles away from where my mum and dad lived and stuff. But there was a specific draw back to this place, and it was beautiful. But the way that the kids were educated wasn't. So I didn't stay there that long because I missed my mum, But from there, it was out of the frying pan into the fire. I came away from the priests who were training us to Christian brothers then, and they were a cruel bunch of people, If you didn't know that you used to get the strap, that's how they used to teach, And I sort of went right into my shell. So when I found drink about 13 or 14 years of age, kapow, it just gave me wings, right? And this whole repressed side of me came out, and I felt free, and that's really what the addiction was. It was the feeling of freedom that the disinhibition of the spirit gave me, really. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about here. I'm just going with it, really.
No, I love it. I love it. I can just see you now. Communion, I'll take a drink. Communion, I'll take a drink.
Absolutely.
Hold on a second. We have to get some more wine. I'll take a drink.
Well, funny enough, my brother and I, we were altar boys. We were altar boys from 8 years of age or something like that. We used to have to set out the cruet, with the wine, and it was one for father, one for me, one for you, and we'd be smiling and laughing on the altar while we were serving and stuff like this. It's hilarious looking back, but at the time I can see that I was such a frightened lad, and what it caused me to be a gross people pleaser. That I just had this absolute inability to say no to anybody if they asked me anything at all, That's fortunately left me now. But it took a bit of courage, really, and a bit of training in saying no, because I'd meet somebody in the mall, right, and I'd think, oh Christ, there's so and so Billy, and he'd collar me, and I'd be talking, and I'd be there for about half an hour because I couldn't say to him, look, Bill, nice to see you, and I've got to go, But now I go like that. Hello, Bill, I've got to go. And off,
Oh, finding that voice, getting that fifth chakra cleared. And that's the pathway between the heart and the brain, how you get it coherent and in sync. I figured that out a long time ago. I didn't have to watch a program on it, but there's a lot of us that just really need to cough up all that phlegm and get things working. So things are in sync, and it's okay if the heart's bigger than the brain. We're switching gears now, where we're not being led by the head, right? Yeah, we're being led by the heart, and the heart has a lot to teach us. And that's the beautiful thing about the innocence of children. I love working with kids. They tell me all kinds of stories and about their guides and their space travels, and they're just so raw. And then they get a hold of the system, gets a hold of them, and things change. And I'm trying to keep it so that somewhere in the balance of their home, one parent still lets them elaborate and talk and be in their heart, instead of having this 10 and 2 gotta do list for the rest of your freaking life, which so many of us have gotten to the point in the last 4 years. So in some ways we have to bless what has occurred, to completely just say, you know what, this 9 to 5 standard thing isn't working for me. What can I do to create myself? I don't want to recalibrate something, because we're in the new earth spin where things are being calibrated anew. It's not just about recalibrating, because a lot of things that worked in the old are no longer going to work in the new. So it needs to have its own rhythm, its own spin, its own spiral. And so that's also causing many of us to sit back and just say, okay, how do I make do today? How do I do today, so that when I lay my head on the pillow at night, I can say, I didn't harm someone else with my thoughts or my mouth or my actions or the horn of my car, or, maybe begrudging putting dinner on the table because I'm freaking tired. Little things that we do, because everything we do, every part of energy that comes from us spills off, it douses off onto someone else. And the younger you are, the less you understand it, and then you collect it.
Yeah.
And then at some point you need some therapy, which, I can keep a lot of people in business, but let's not do any harm, folks. How about starting there?
It's amazing, and I think once you surrender into the service, if you like, of our intuition or innate intelligence, or whatever you want to call that thing, I think it's almost like things are presented to you, actions to take on a daily basis. So I don't manage my own life now. I just allow my higher power to do that now, whatever that means. It's a feeling for me, so I get presented with a job. So if people say, who are you working for? I'll say, I'm working for the universe. And they think, oh, fucking hell, we thought he was getting better, but he's obviously going on the way back to the psychiatric department. but that the source creator is my employer. I see it like that. And I sort of get a schedule right at the beginning of the day, and I try and feel my way into taking the actions, and it's working, Sandra. It's working. I'm not going to change it. I listen to what everybody says. If I've got some ideas that aren't quite right, I can let go of them immediately. I'm not hanging on to anything, and sort of supplant them with this new information that's coming in. I could never do that before, because what I said and what I thought was correct, and everybody else was wrong, and so my head was on upside down. So I feel like I've been turned the right way up, right, which is generally the opposite of most people now in the world. But I'm happy with who I am today, but there's always room for improvement.
Well, every day is a learning lesson. I mean, we're in tweak mode. Okay, I did that. I would do it a little bit different now. Not beat yourself up over it. Just say, okay, well, actually, I wouldn't do that ever again, because I didn't like that at all. And sometimes it's like, yeah, I would do that over again. I would do it exactly like that. It's like planning a vacation. You go on a vacation to someplace you haven't been before. You always come back going, all right, well, this is what I would do different if I went back. This is where the quality places were. This is where I would stay. This is what I would do. This is what I would want to see. That's the same thing in our life, because life could be like a vacation, but it would be a staycation in the changing of the ever loving vibrations of your own little unique world. Yeah. And that's how you're going to step forward and have any kind of success on having any kind of mastery or honing in some skills to have a life. Because most people were owned by everything else. We're owned by lists of things to do and obligations and expectations and old programming. And we don't want to have a nervous breakdown and just kick it all to the side. We want to be able to say, you know what? Let me plan for something different. Let me stop and think for something. And that's the kind of work you and I do. We just help awaken other people to, well, what if?
Yeah.
What if you tried this? What if that? And I want to go back to something you said about, you know, I could do this and I could in doing things for all these people. I too came in as a fixer. Oh, let me do that. I got that. I can do that faster, easier, and better. And it was in the 90s when I had a steady, solid astrologer friend of mine, and he would do my chart and all this other stuff. And he would say, you've got to stop doing things. You're never going to get a thank you because you're doing things way before somebody is ready for it, and so they find it annoying. And I keep remembering that because I still fall back in that same habit, and I start doing things for people, and then I'm like, why did they just act like that? Why did they just treat? Why do I feel this between me and someone? Well, it's because I jumped ahead and I started saying and doing stuff. Not that I was trying to show off, I was just trying to be helpful and be of service, but they weren't ready for it. So that's
Yeah.
why I step back now and close the pie hole a little more often.
Yeah, I know that one perfectly well. And I think I realized that most of the time I was interfering with people's growth, and it's,
Yes.
to detach with love is difficult. And it doesn't mean, and sometimes people say to me, especially my wife, you don't seem to care. And I said, please believe me, darling, I care.
I
And she said,
care almost so
yeah,
much.
yeah, I said, I care. I can feel everything that's happening. I'm just not going to jump in and start trying to fix things for people who need to grow themselves. So I understand that, had to learn that myself. I didn't make up my mind at all until I let go of my mother's leg at 38 years of age, because every
Mm.
single thought I had, I ran it past my mother, and she went, when I was a young kid, she said to me, what do you want to be when you grow up, son? And I said, I'd like to be a doctor. And her response was, you don't want to do that. He said, first of all, they're more intelligent than we are. So there we are. So you're thick, son, right? The next thing is they've got more money than us. They're more posh than us and all that. So that was my career's advice at 7 or 8 years of age, and that was like put the mockers on it from a
Yeah.
very early age. And so really, until I was about 38 years of age, the life I was living was my mum's life. And I can see, and there's no judgment here. It's just clarity now. I see it very, very clearly. My mum's still going. She's coming up to 93 years of age. She's in a nursing home round the corner. And I go in and she still tells me how to live my life. But I give her a big hug now and a smile. And then after about 10 seconds, she forgets what she's just said. So that's where I'm up to with all that. But like you said, I didn't realize really that from a very early age, I was nothing more than a programmed automaton.
Yes.
And once I started to see that, I thought, oh my God. And somebody asked me, the question is, where did you get that idea from? And I had to look at all my behaviors. And basically, there were ideas that I had absorbed from everybody else. And it was only once I started to lead a new life based upon my personal experience that I understood how it all works.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very,
Yeah,
very
I can
into,
really feel that.
yeah. I'm very into, because I mean I'm being guided to help young children and adolescents, and especially the
Mm.
children coming in, trying to keep their slate clean so that they think they can grow themselves. So basically, helping parents to feed and water them and keep a watchful eye without conditioning them and programming into their own failings. Basically, I see it as clear as anything. So I'm involved with Earth schools. I'm involved with lots of people doing homeschooling now, and the miracle is, I work in a sort of academic medical environment, and I was walking through the corridors last week, and somebody came up to me and said, Joe, I haven't seen you for ages. Is there any chance that you can come back and teach on our module? And I said, what's the module called? And they said, well, it's called, um, it's mindfulness, basically. Oh, it's contemporary approaches and mindfulness for mental health in children and adolescents. And I thought,
Mm.
thank you, God. So I've just been on to someone this afternoon to plan it out. And I think that they want me to become the module leader next year at the university I work on. I
Mm.
didn't fix that up. It just dropped into place. And I said, well, when I get that up my spine, it's like, go on, son, you're in the right place. So there was
Yeah.
just a little indication. Sometimes I
Yeah.
get like a stroke in at the back of my head, and sometimes it goes
Mm-hmm.
smack at the back of the head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're working with children. You know, they're coming in with less agenda and less stuff to sort through. And then the problem is they're getting with parents, teachers, and so on that just keep messing them up because they want them to fall into line with the patterns that they know. And so I'm glad to hear that there's going to be a mindfulness that can be taught to children. And you're going to be a part of that module. That's fantastic. Because if we can help just a few here and there, but you're going to have more of clumps of things.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you when we get done recording about the homeschooling thing.
Yeah, okay. And also, I think I'm like a community connector as well, because I know lots of people, and
Mm-hmm.
so I just put people onto people. Otherwise, I'd be burnt out myself, and so I get lots of emails, obviously, that I'm sure you do, and messages, and sometimes I just haven't got time to answer them or even acknowledge them. So it's trying to maintain that balance within myself as well, really. So I don't mean to be rude. If anyone's listening and they're waiting for some sort of message, thanks for the message. But if I don't get back to you, it's because something else has taken its place.
Well, that's one of the things about looking at our energy is we don't want to siphon it over here. And if we're called to answer a message, we'll answer them. But for the most part, we just acknowledge that we got it and we have to focus over here. We can't let anything, steer the ship in a different direction because we got a lot of, and I almost said angelic, which is sort of the celestial beings that are here and coming in more. We're steering all of the celestial waves
Yeah.
in a different direction.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I got in 2011. Yeah. Yeah, 2011. I woke up one morning and a clear thought came in. Right, you're going to have to go and tell people now about this great shift in consciousness. Just, I like to come in when they come in. And I think,
You're like, sure, no
I said,
problem.
I said, yeah, that's very kind of you. What's the great shift in consciousness? They said it's basically what you've been going through. So now you've got to go out there now, find out more and all that. And within 6 months, I was talking about what was going to happen on the 21st of December 2012, what it represents. I didn't have a clue about Mayans and Mayan calendars and all this stuff, no idea. But I got fed it very, very quickly. And in no time at all, I was
Mm-hmm.
traveling across the country giving talks on this. And I'm looking back now, I can see clearly how I'm being guided into where I'm going. And I'm happy with that now because it feels correct for me, really. So that's where I'm up to. Sandra, we're nearly coming up to time. I call this getting real with Dr. Joe. If there was anybody having problems at the moment and finding it difficult or maybe feeling stressed and anxious or depressed or even thinking about popping off, have you got any sort of simple, straightforward, practical advice that's coming to you on how they can be helped, please?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to, in order to step away from that angst and anxiety, is to reach your hand out to somebody that can give you some lifeline, and to breathe and to know that this too shall pass, that you don't have to leave, and if you did, you didn't finish what you came here to do. So the lesson really is, how can you sit in the pain and reach your hand out and ask other people for assistance without removing the lesson, you know, medications, all kinds of things that people will do. And hey, if you need a little bit of that to help you coast, go for it. I have no complaints about that. That's not my field of expertise. I'm working with people right now that are in late teens and in their 20s and some older that have felt like, I'm cracking in half, I got to go. And so we're talking about, well, do you feel it's your time? And if you do, what's the reason for that? And then we may go into a hypnosis. We may find that, oh, my past life memory is coming up now and it's giving me these psychological feelings and physical feelings, but it really isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just supposed to acknowledge, I already did that. I'm staying here. And so there becomes to have a little bit of a resolve, because there's a lot of stigma around feeling crazy and having issues, and not being able to really truly talk to somebody about it, where you're met with an open heart. So I say to people out there, hang in there, reach out to Dr. J, reach out to myself. If we can't help you, we can maybe find someone who can, but let it be a first step. The first step is connect with your breath and learn how to connect with your breath. Learn how to get into even walking meditation, where you can look at the degrees of your alpha, get yourself into some sort of beta, and then get yourself, I said that correctly, right? Get yourself into theta,
Other way
or at
around, I think.
least some, which one?
Beta, as you call it,
I'm
is
sorry. Yes,
it,
thank you. I'm talking too fast. Beta, up your upper levels of beta are when you're like, oh, incoming, got to go 10 and 2. I know I'm here. I know what's happening around me. You're in this a little more of a fight flight, got to operate. How to get down a little bit into that alpha, into that relaxation state, and maybe borderline just a little bit of the theta waves, and get yourself into that self-soothe and that calm. And that's some of the things that I've been teaching in some of my sessions, at least to help somebody get through a hiccup.
Yeah.
Or a moment where they're like, okay, oh yes, I remember, I can do A, B, and C. And I can visualize it, and then I can connect my breath, and then I can feel my heart, and then I can feel my body. And so I combine that with advanced Reiki, with zone technique therapy, different things, whatever's in my toolbox that's needed at the moment, because there are people out here that can help you if you're feeling to that point where you can't take anymore. And this is only going to escalate.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's only going to escalate. And so if you can help yourself now and pour some of the tea out of that filled up teacup, you'll have room for maybe some other tools that could help you, work with that.
I have a phrase that says, if there's something playing on your mind, best get it off your chest. Right. And it's about breathing, really. And it's about thinking, there's lots and lots of people. I used to think I was the only one in my particular situation and stuff like that. And when I went, and this was the thing about group meetings, when I heard other people talking, I thought, Christ, he's a bit like me, that fella, and going through similar things. So you no longer feel alone then, and realize that you're not alone. And, we are unique, but there's certain patterns that seem to emerge from everybody, and other things that have helped me. And I will be teaching my students this, right? See, they're already my students. I've got 40 to start off with, and I'll be teaching them. I'll be showing them how Reiki works. I'll be showing them things about aromatherapy, massage, Tai Chi, Qigong, all the energy practices that I've learned myself over the years, because even Tai Chi, just doing that breathing in and breathing out, and waving hands in clouds, and other things that I'll talk about are things like feng shui, that I'm calling feng shui, and just how clutter can help you. Right, well, it doesn't help you. It can almost like disable your thinking. So it's creating space in your environment to create space in your head, to let the air circulate a bit more efficiently and stuff like that. Sandra, love, that was absolutely fantastic. Where's that? Well, that's like an hour and 2 minutes have gone there in no time at all. And
yeah, I'd like to sign up for your class. Can I be 41?
Well, you can. And like Sandra said, reach out. She said, reach out to me. Don't reach out to me. I'm too busy.
Then reach out to me. I'll make time.
I'm not looking for any business. I'm too. Reach out to Sandra, right? Because she'll probably, hopefully, put her contact details in the chat and the comments box. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
Great. So thanks. We'll have a chat after this is finished, but I hope people have got something from that. But I'd just like to say that what I found out was that the solution, that's something that dissolves problems, is here. And if you can find a way to almost surrender, and the quiet moment, just say, hello, is there anybody in there? And not being funny, if you sort of make this sort of gesture of trying to listen to your heart, sometimes miracles happen, and you might be more surprised than you realize. So all I'm saying is tap on your heart, try and listen in, and just say, look, I'm a bit stuck at the moment. If there is such a thing as this innate intelligence, can you give us a clue? And so just try it. Don't knock it till you've tried it, and just see if that starts to guide you in a different direction. Right, love. Thanks very much indeed. So lovely to see you again. And on that note, Sandra and Dr. Joe say ta-ta, and we'll maybe see you further down the line. See how we're getting on. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.